Hey, what's up? This is Joshua, Daily Video Blog. Welcome. It's a very quiet day in my backyard in South Minneapolis right now. Let's see. So we're in the midst of the DBA Design Hack series, which is a series of short videos that go into some tactics I use in my own work that hopefully help make my work better and allow me to get to a quality endpoint quicker. So I want to talk back to the topic of the MVP, or minimum viable product. And today's going to be about how I will sometimes use mood boards as an actual design concept, as opposed to just a form of research or kind of a branding ideation. So one thing I'll point out is I'm aware that all of the things that I'm talking about are already in existence. Like, I didn't invent pencil sketches or mood boards or the idea of a copy layout, but I try to use these in a way where I'm using them as an actual design concept. And I think the big difference is like the way that I sort of frame and label them. So with a mood board, really typically, like in branding or design work, a mood board is a way of they tend to serve two functions. So the first one is to document a trend. So if you want to make some very like trendy or trend forward work, you find a sort of emerging style and you document it, and you show a bunch of that stuff, and then you try to say like, here is the neighborhood of what we're going to do. Or another one is a way of a kind of form of design research, which is that you're trying to come up with a look and feel for something, and you grab a bunch of different pieces of things, and then you say, these are like the elements that we're going to sort of investigate in the work. And where I've seen this a lot is like in retail work, where it's very ephemeral. Things come and go, very sort of trend driven, and it tends not to have necessarily a concept. Like summer at Target is not a concept deep location. So the way that those sort of boards work is like as a way of finding a bunch of cool stuff, and then sort of replicating and putting that together in a way to make something interesting to look at or whatever. So the way that I sort of see my uses of mood boards being different is I use them almost as if I'm creating a brand style guide before having actually produced anything. And they come after a concept. So I don't do the thing of just going on Tumblr or Pinterest or even the library these days and finding a bunch of stuff and going like, oh, that's cool and that's interesting and that's neat, and kind of putting it all together. Instead, what I tend to do is I do my research phase and my ideation. I start to think about like what might something look like and what kind of visual references there are. So an example I could talk about is some haunted basement work for the soap factory we did a couple of years ago. And one of the concepts, I think, was the idea of a fever dream. I was like, okay, I want to investigate this idea of a fever dream. What does that look like to me? And I started thinking about different types of textures and different illustration effects. And then I go and even maybe some ideas about color, and I start putting together a mood board that expresses what I think the fever dream will look like and how type might work. And what I'm trying to do with the mood board is it needs to be specific enough in that me and the client can sort of be on the same page about what it is I'm trying to do, but it needs to be open enough that it doesn't just say like, oh, I'm going to do this one thing. So for example, 2 to 3 images that look very similar by the same designer, that's not a mood board for me, because that doesn't illustrate a concept. That says like very clearly, I'm going to take these 3 things and probably recreate them. And if I don't recreate them, the client is going to be confused because they saw this thing that I said like, oh, this is what it's going to look like. So what I'm trying to do is find a rich expression of techniques and ideas, but within a narrow field of vision or something. So, like the way that color might work on a mood board I make is like it might be very deliberately all blue, or it might be all black and white with hits of red, and nothing that shows up in that mood board is going to deviate from that, because I want it to be very clear what I'm thinking about in terms of color. I don't want to get the person to sign off on the concept in a mood board idea and then show up with something that doesn't look like it would fit on that mood board, or it seems totally out of left field. And I try to have a lot of things on it, so I want it to have at least 20 images, because I don't want to be tied down to exactly what I'm going to do, but I want it to be very much like, so I'm thinking it's these kinds of textures and this sort of typographic approach and this kind of color palette. Um, so that when I come back, instead of showing three different concepts uh, with three different executions, I'll take that one concept and I might do two or three different versions of it and say, like, so here's a few different ways I'm thinking about this concept that we agreed upon. But my focus with doing it, or my point with doing it, is to kind of say, is to kind of have a conversation that's open-ended and loose, but have us very much be on the same page. So, like, one of the reasons I don't like brainstorming with people is because a brainstorm is not an actual thing. It's not visual. We can't discuss it. It doesn't look like anything. So once we start brainstorming, if we don't agree on what it might look like, all of us at the table have a different idea in our mind of what that's going to be. So instead, what I want to do is kind of take like the thing that's in my mind as a solid concept, find a visual expression for it, and put it in front of them and say, here's the concept I'm thinking about. Here's the visual language of textures and colors and whatnot that I think it will look like. And the reason it works as a kind of MVP for me is the person can like the concept and then go, oh, that's not what I thought that would look like. And then they can sort of shoot back and say, like, listen, I really like the concept, but here's what I have a problem with the stuff I'm looking at and why it doesn't ring true to me. So then I can go back and go like, okay, well, we agree on the concept. And I might go back and do two different mood boards that are, again, like, okay, so it could look like this or it could look like this. Um, and then we can continue to have that conversation. But meanwhile, we're not seduced by the visuals. We're still really concretely talking about a concept that evolves out of the content and out of the research. I have a video of me talking about that haunted basement work that at some point I will be not lazy and I will edit and put it up, and then I'll link it below and it'll make more sense. But I think that's sort of the last of these MVP type talks, and we'll dig more into like research and presentations after this. All right, thanks a lot. If you have any questions, leave a comment.